I had a nasty breakup with my girlfriend a while back, and although we lived in an apartment together, she stood as the owner of it, so I had no choice but to move out. Thankfully, a good friend of mine allowed me to stay at her place until I could find my own crib. Since I only wanted a rental apartment, my choices were limited. There is a low supply and high demand for rental apartments in my city. After going through several that was too expensive for me, I found a vacant one in the outskirts of the city. It was a large 3-room apartment on the 4th floor with a view over the woods, and the rent was very low. I immediately applied, and within a couple of hours I got a reply that I could have it. I deeply regret moving here, and now you may wonder why I haven't left. It's because the contract and the rules forbids me from leaving. The contract is for 1 year, and honestly, I don't expect to survive until it expires. The same day as I moved in, I found a letter addressed to me from the company that rented it. I opened the letter and took out the paper which said, "Rules for living in the apartment complex. 1. Regardless if you are home or away, your door must always be locked. You do not want to have unwanted guests in your apartment. Should you forget to lock the door after leaving, do not enter your apartment when you return. Call our support for instructions on how to proceed. 2. It is not forbidden, but we do not recommend leaving the apartment between 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Some entities like to roam the building during the night and does not take lightly to intruders. This only applies if you want to leave your apartment and not if you return to it. 3. If you leave the apartment between that time, always carry a flashlight, a bag of salt and holy water. The flashlight will repel the shadowy figures you may see. Should you hear footsteps behind you, and no one is there, use the salt to create a salt ring and do not break it until the footsteps has stopped. The holy water is for any people you may encounter. To make sure it is people, spray it on them. Should they react to it, immediately run back to your apartment, and stay there until 5 a.m. If they do not react, it's safe to proceed. 4. The basement should never be visited under any circumstances between 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. If you should ignore this rule, then there is a high risk that you may never leave it. 5. If you are in the basement at any given time, with exception to Rule 4, and hear growls behind you, ignore them, and calmly walk to the exit, and do not run because the thing that makes the sound will catch you if you do. 6. On Mondays and Thursdays your doorbell will ring exactly 3 a.m. Approach the door as silently as you can and look through the peephole. There will be an old man with a fancy hat outside. Invite him in and politely ask him if he wants food. It doesn't matter what food you give him. After he has finished the food, he will thank you for your kindness and leave the apartment. Do not refuse him, because if you do then you will die. 7. Should objects in your apartment move between locations, pour the liquid we have provided you with on them and it will stop. The liquid is located underneath the sink in the kitchen. No harm will be done to you if you fail to do this, but there is a risk that some objects will never be seen again. 8. Do not stare into the mirror for longer than 5 minutes at a time. Should you forget about this rule, your own reflection will remain and slowly make its way out of it. If this happens, smash the mirror before it can escape. 9. Every apartment has an intercom with the name of those who lives here and the number of their apartment. If you wish to visit any tenants, dial them, and ask for their permission to visit. Should the doorbell ring and a tenant ask to come in, do not answer them and remain silent. It's not a tenant, as they would never come visit you before calling first. 10. If you receive mail that is not addressed by the company emblem, do not touch it with your hands. Use a glove or something else to pick it up and immediately burn it. Should you pick it up, the mailman will visit you the next day, and trust us, you do not want to meet him. 11. If the light in your apartment turns off between 9:15 p.m. to 9:20 p.m., find a place to hide until they have been turned on again. Do not worry, the creature won't find you as long as you are in hiding. 12. Any visitor, meaning visitors outside tenants, must also follow the rules. If they break them, then both you and they will suffer the consequences. 13. Do not try and leave or move out until your contract expires. If you try and do this, then no matter where you go or who you visit, you will always return to your apartment. I read through the rules repeatedly. Luckily for me, I've read about rules such as this on Reddit and know the seriousness of breaking them. However, it doesn't mean they didn't scare the living hell out of me. To calm myself down, I made coffee and went to watch TV. A few moments later I heard the doorbell ring, which made me jump and spill out my coffee, but somehow, I managed to stay quiet. "Hello," a female voice said, but I did not answer and sat quietly on the sofa, shaking with fear. "Anybody home?" the voice continued, now much louder and menacing, but I remained quiet. "I know you are home, let me in," it said now in a demonic voice and started to bang on the door, with each bang having enough force to knock the door down, but it held. This continued for 10 minutes until it stopped. After a couple of more minutes I got the courage to go to the door and look out the peephole and nothing was there. I sighed and went back to the sofa. I looked at the clock and it said 9:14 p.m. Remembering the rule, I went to my wardrobe as a precaution to have a chance to hide, since my encounter with 9 had me shaken to the core. As it turned 9:15 the lights went out and I entered it and covered my mouth. I did not see what entered my apartment, but it was big based on the heavy footsteps it made. I could hear it sniffing around and it took every amount of my willpower to stay quiet. It then left and the lights were turned on again. I carefully exited the wardrobe and sighed as the creature had vanished. After that event, I could not go to sleep, so I decided to watch TV, but somehow fell asleep and woke up to the sound of my doorbell ringing. I looked at my phone and it said 3 a.m. This made me wide awake and I approached the door with trembling steps and looked through the peephole. My entire body froze as I saw the old man with the fancy hat.